Hello, I'm your host, Diana Doherty, and this is the V Revolution podcast brought to you by women's intimate health brand, Balance Active. Today we're going to be decoding some of the weird, wacky and wonderful things about the female body.
And hi, I'm Dr. Priya, and today we're deep diving into those conversations about menstruation because let's be real, ladies, we're all in this together. If you have any concern about something that we say on this podcast, then please don't hesitate to contact your GP.
So grab a cuppa and let's revolutionise how we talk about women's intimate health. Periods are probably the most natural and essential thing that we have, but there's so much misinformation when it comes to periods from, education when you're young and as adult women. And so we are joined today by the very brilliant Victoria Causley from Empower Periods, which is a platform dedicated to empowering and educating people about their periods. Hi, Victoria.
Hi,
How are
thank you
you?
for having me. I'm good.
So you obviously have such a passion for menstrual health education. Talk to us a bit about why that is.
So I created Empower Periods in 2021, literally because I had bad periods myself. So I've been suffering since, I'm now 24 and I've been suffering since I was 15, and I'm only now kind of getting to potentially a diagnosis of what they think is endometriosis, which a lot of people through Empower Periods have got. So I've had so much helpful information to help me out. And that is why I created it, because I felt like I was a bit lost in my own discovery. And it turns out a lot of other people were as well, so it's kind of grown from there, and it's been really good since.
And you used the word suffering there, which is
what
it is.
It really is.
And yet I feel like we're told as women that that's just how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to suffer that every month, and that's not the case.
I think when I was going to the doctors, which I was constantly, and maybe it's because I didn't really know what was going on with myself. And I also, before I did Empower Periods, people wouldn't believe it, but I really didn't talk about it at all. I was not very open about periods. I didn't talk about it like that. So I didn't really want to go to the doctors and say, this is how I feel and this is what's happening to me. So I knew that it was taboo because I felt like it was taboo. I did get told a lot of times that, maybe I'm just one of these people that have bad periods, not just by doctors, but by everybody. You do lose hope. And I think that's why a lot of people are so engaging with Empower Periods, because I give them maybe a little bit of I listen to them. That's what I try and do, support them, because I know that that's not always there when you're going through it, and it is hard.
And even that, you're just somebody who has bad periods. Are we supposed to be in pain every month, Priya? Is that? Are we supposed to suffer? Is that? Because I also have very heavy, very painful periods and have done since I was 12, and I again have always went, oh well, that and my mother did and my grandmother did, and so it was ingrained in me that it's a generational thing, and it's just maybe that's your DNA or in your genes, but maybe that's not the case.
No, I mean, the menstrual cycle obviously has different phases, and during the luteal phase, which is the phase after ovulation, around day sort of 21, we have our progesterone levels dipping, and that can cause these premenstrual symptoms. So, low mood, pain, cramping, that kind of thing. And so we obviously it's not nice to suffer, but that is just one of the side effects almost of having low progesterone.
It's so unfair.
I know.
It really is.
I find that the luteal phase is actually my worst though as well. So that's what I try and talk about, because I'm no one actually talks about the phases and how they affect your life. It's not just your period. You don't just bleed. That's not, for me, that's not the worst part. I'm fine on my actual period. It's the week before that I'm a different person. And that's what I try and spread awareness on, because I just don't understand how we're not taught more about it. And I just wish people knew more.
People know about
they really
the phases.
Don't. They just don't know enough about it.
What each week means. So what we talk about there, the luteal?
The luteal phase, that's the third phase.
So that's the week before your period, is it? No.
Well,
I mean, even the fact that I don't know this information speaks volumes.
No, it is. It's insane, and no one knows about it.
So if we start off with the follicular phase, so that is day 1. So that is from the first day of your period up until ovulation. So that's when your
follicles
exactly they're developing. So at that phase you have a hormone called FSH, which helps with the development of follicles, and then you have estrogen levels slowly increasing during that phase. And so when your estrogen levels, sorry, give me 1 second.
You're all right. There's a lot, and it's so confusing.
There's a lot, yeah.
And so, but obviously, like I had read briefly before about these different, like the different phases, and how they affect like your productivity levels and your creativity levels, and at these different phases that you can accomplish different things better and should maybe not do certain things. Is that something you know much about?
Well, so it's something that like I'm really bad at. I'm trying to be like more like I need to track everything, because as somebody that obviously like, you know, practice what you preach, like I literally tell everyone to track their cycle because I just think it is so important. And I definitely do more like than the average person. But in terms of like, I know people that like through Empower periods that track it, like they're like, oh, I don't book anything on this week because it's like I'm going to be like PMSing, or like I book it after because I know that this is my follicular phase and I'm going to feel great then. So it's like insane how like when you actually know it, you can like adapt your lifestyle to feel certain way, and like eating certain foods and things, like all of these things that I'm teaching myself as I go. But it's just
so. The way you're saying there, like, oh, I would feel great to my follicular phase. That's a word, isn't it? It's a mouthful. Is that everyone, or is that you find yourself, okay, these are the weeks I'm best, or is there specific weeks that we as women?
I think medically it is, right? Like you feel better after your period.
After, oh yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. But like hormonally, it's, I think that's right.
So, I mean, so with the follicular phase, that is from the start of your period until ovulation, day 14. So it's when your FSH, which is a hormone that stimulates the follicle growth, that goes up. And as that goes up, that produces estrogen. And so your estrogen level also increases up until day 14 when it's the highest, and that's when you have your ovulation. However, when your estrogen level is low, so at the very start of the follicular phase, low estrogen can contribute to migraines. However, as your estrogen increases, this can increase your libido, your sex drive, which is natural for the body because obviously the body wants to procreate, and so you want to have an increased sex drive.
Is this in the lead up to ovulation? Okay.
Exactly. And so then after the follicular, people do tend to feel good at that peak of follicular phase up until ovulation, and then you have ovulation that happens. And then after that, you have your luteal phase where you tend to feel a bit worse because your progesterone levels are low.
So obviously the way that we function as women is quite clearly completely different to like our male counterparts. So why are we not taught how to tune into that in school? Because I feel like we would be better versions of ourselves if we knew how to figure out that's the week I should be doing this, and that's the week that you say like I shouldn't be doing that because I'm not going to be at my best. And why is that? Why is it this blanket approach?
I don't know. I think it's like there's just I don't know, we obviously haven't been taught like historically. It literally goes back like there's just you're taught what you're taught, like science based, but no one even now, like half of my friends besides like from when I talk about it, because it's all I talk about, like they don't know about like the menstrual phases and stuff. So like you know, I don't remember being taught about it in school. I think I was taught like everything I was taught was science, which was obviously really helpful and you do need to know. But I think like what we miss is the like empathetic side and like having like the sympathy, because it is so much more than just a physical bleed. Obviously, like there's no support around the actual period itself. So I don't know why there's a gap though.
Absolutely. And I mean, at school, all you're taught is that little graph where it's like all the hormones increase, they decrease. You don't really think about the effects.
Or practically,
like
what that
practically,
means.
exactly. You know what happens with the egg, like when it's released, but then you don't know about how it affects you, your emotions, you know, your mood, all of that. Like you didn't get taught that at school.
And even what it means as regards fertility.
Yeah.
Like I went to an all girls school that was ran by nuns. We were taught if you're within 6 miles of a sperm, you will be pregnant. That's what we were taught. Don't even look at a boy, you'll be pregnant, right? That was the teaching. There was no, and like genuinely only when I started going through fertility treatment to have my children did I learn. And I mean, this is a woman who's turning 30 at the time. I was like, only then did I learn you can only get pregnant in this tiny window. We were like, they literally were like, do not look at someone, you'll get pregnant. Isn't that insane? Like we were never even really taught the correlation between your menstrual cycle and your fertility.
No, it is crazy.
Which seems so obvious.
Yeah. I think it's just crazy, like you're not taught even like contraception sides of things, you're just not taught about it enough. Like I think that should also be something that we're taught about in school in more depth.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's a big gap for what we're taught about.
And even like now, I would love to learn more about understanding how you do use my own menstrual cycle in order to achieve things better and to be able to function better as a parent and as, you know, as a colleague, I suppose, as well. There's also a massive conversation around period poverty because, you know, I know that there are certain places, I think even in Scotland, and there's a few places they're bringing in, there's like free sanitary towels and free tampons in public toilets and stuff as well, but they're really expensive if you can't access them like that. That's such an, and like so many people are excluded from that conversation because, I mean, you hear about like girls not being able to go to school because they just don't have access to tampons.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. There's like a crazy statistic, I don't know what it is, but of like the amount of girls that, I think it's only in the UK that they've done it, but of girls that are too like scared to go to a school when they're on their period because of how they feel. And then another like group of girls that literally use toilet roll because they can't afford sanitary products. And it is no surprise. I mean, you go into the shops and sometimes I look and I'm like, I don't want to pay that much money. It's not my fault. I'm on my period. Like,
and the heavier your period is, the more those you need.
Yeah. I mean, they're bringing in, we're moving forward in terms of period poverty. It's very slow. Scotland do seem to be very ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, like menstrual cups and things like that, that's all, we have grown quite a lot in the past, I literally say a year, that I've seen so much more come about. But like cups are really good because obviously then it's sustainable and you don't need to like keep paying for new products, but they're not comfortable for everyone. And it's
I was going to say, are they? And I've never tried.
No, I've never tried.
No, I mean, I've tried a menstrual cup, but even for me, I'm like, I'm not sure. It's like, am I better with tampons? Like, it is just like, you can't just assume everyone's going to like them just because they can't afford them.
And there's period underwear as well, I think.
Yeah, there's period pants. I actually find them really helpful because I personally, I'm really heavy on like the first 3 days. And if I'm going out anywhere, I'm always that person that's like, oh, can you check me? Like, can you check? Seriously, can you look at me?
This is the thing. I have on numerous occasions throughout my life had to approach a stranger and say, I'm really sorry, but you're leaking, just so that you know. And it's like a sisterhood that we have where you're like, I got your back, but you need to go change your trousers. Do you know what I mean?
Never wear white trousers is what my mum used to always tell me.
But like, ever?
Yeah, literally. Like people that are like irregular bleeders, like, what, do you just never wear white trousers? Like, yeah, it's hard, but period pants are really handy because you just wear them and then you feel like that extra precaution even on your period, and then you can have like a tampon in. And then you're suited for the day.
Yeah. You've got to, you've come from all angles, literally. And like, so I think people have obviously different symptoms. The most common symptoms leading up to your period are cramping and, you say, migraines as well. And like, I know it's a very blanket term, but mood swings, because obviously your hormones are imbalanced at that stage. Do you tend to if you say you track your periods, so do you mean by going like, this is day 16, this is day 17?
Well, I use apps, which I'm literally in the process of finding the one that works for me. I've looked at multiple ones, and I do find them really helpful because I just put in all my symptoms, and then I've noticed sometimes I'm like, why am I so moody today? This is weird. And then I look back at last month and I'm like, oh, it was the same time. So it's it's good. It gives you that comfort. You're I'm not going crazy. This is very normal for me.
And
I think that's what you're not taught.
A bit of a bit of space for that. And it's okay.
And you kind of learn to tolerate it, and you're no, I'm actually going to look after myself a bit more this week. I've had a hard day and I'm in that phase. Let's just accept it. And it was the same last month. So I do find it helpful to track it quite a lot, to be honest.
Do you, either of you, remember what age you were when you had your first period?
I think I was maybe 14, 14 or 15, and we were on holiday, and I remember having a really bad stomachache after the breakfast buffet that we went to, and I thought I'd eaten something that was bad. And
you were cursing down the hotel for food poisoning.
Exactly. And so I went back to the hotel bedroom. I sat on the bed, and I was just telling my parents about how unwell I felt, and then I stand up, and the white bed sheet is covered in blood.
Wow. So like all of a sudden sort of came on like that. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that was my first period. Yeah, my dad was there. I was very embarrassed.
But that's so sad, isn't it? But you're made to feel so embarrassed, and that is because it wasn't talked about enough before then, you know.
Yeah, it's
Because
just
we
really
all feel
taboo.
so the same, I suppose. Do you remember when yours was?
Yeah, I was. See, I felt quite late because I was like 15, and I at the age I was, I remember being, I don't know why I remember this, but like in the PE room, and all the girls were like, yeah, I started my period, and like you just think like, oh, I still haven't started mine. Like, where's mine?
So bizarre.
So it's like, yeah, on this one hand, you're like, it's such a taboo and no one talks about it, and like, God, don't bring up your period. But in the other hand, I'm like, where is mine? Like,
Yes.
everyone's got it and I haven't.
I know. It's
So, I mean, mine wasn't like traumatic. I was, you know, I came on my period, and I'm very lucky. I've got sisters and my mum, and we're all very open. That's partly why I was like, what do you do if you don't have that? And like that motivates me to like talk about it more, because I can't imagine being in that position.
Yeah.
And you know, as soon as I went home, I was like, oh, I've come on my period, and it was just so normal for me. But even then, I still often think, I'm like, I have a very female dominant like
House,
family, like cousin, everything. We're all very open. We all talk about it. And yeah, it still was a little bit taboo growing up. Like it still like was something I'd be like, oh, I need some more pads and stuff. Like, you'd still feel that like little bit of embarrassment. And even when I went to uni, I was embarrassed to buy tampons for the first time. Like,
But did you say that conversation then, like with your mates in school, where you're like, oh, she has it and I haven't, and I don't feel
it's weird.
And I remember I was like 11 though when I was in first year in school, which I don't know if our school years are different back home, but I was 11, maybe on the cusp of 12, and I had my first period. Now it didn't come on as dramatically as yours, but it was like, is that a period? I think it is. And I was almost like egging it on, because it was like, I want to be a woman already.
Yeah, that's it.
And I remember, like, I genuinely remember this shift in my personality. It became I remember just being like, I'm all grown up, and I genuinely remember being like on the street, like playing with the people, and just being like, oh, you guys have no idea what I know. I remember just being like, I'm a woman. Yeah, but like, I can't play those children's games. Wise up, as well, I've got my period now. I've got things to be at.
It is
like,
crazy.
Yeah, you just feel like, oh, now I'm not all grown up, and it's almost like this. You know, like you had this conversation, and you're in school, and you're like, well, why have I not got mine? But at the same time, it's not talked about enough in the right way.
And then you don't want to ask questions because it's still taboo. And then there's this like really awful cycle, which even now I still think is the same for like loads of things, women's health, like not just periods. But there's this cycle of like, oh, I've had this, but I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't want to talk about it, and I'm too scared to go to the doctors. And then there's a taboo, so I don't know who to ask.
Yeah.
And then no one talks about it. And it seems that anything like vaginal, everyone's
That's
just
what it
like,
is.
I'm just not going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's
so
what it
it's
is.
like, yeah, it's just this like, we need to just break this cycle, because otherwise like no one's discovering.
It's like when you talk about it, as if like everyone's going to have this sudden imagery of your vagina bleeding, and you're like, but we're not, like, they're like half of us in the world roughly have periods, but it's almost like we're all like, how can we be afraid to talk about it when there's like half of us having periods? It's so bizarre. And also for like such a chunk of our lives as well, like such a massive part of our lives, and we don't. But you'd mentioned there about wanting to like help others be able to communicate it better with their own families and talk to their children. Like, what advice would you give people now to communicate with their children ahead of them getting their period?
I mean, so for what I do at Empower Periods, I just try and like support people throughout like the pain that they're going through. And in terms of like advice for parents and things, I have like a few goals that I want to like actually provide talks for parents to go and, you know, guide them and like just hand out a little booklet. I remember my mum gave me a little booklet, and it was literally nothing.
Yeah.
But it had all these things in that to me was so taboo. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm reading like a booklet on like things that literally use the word vagina and not a different word. Yeah, it's like, you know, we're just brought up to always say a different word for vagina. Like it had everything in it. And it was so silly, but I literally kept it for like all the way up until uni, because I would always refer back to this little booklet. So for parents and things, I would be like, you know, find something like that. That's something that I would like love to be able to create, something that you can give to your child, even if you don't, I mean, there are some things out there already, to be honest, but just give that to them, and that when they're coming to the age or whatever, and you don't even have to say anything then, you can like show that you are there, and you're going to be, and like stocking like period pads and tampons when they're like coming up to that age, just having them in the bathroom, like that makes such a difference. I think it's just like acknowledging that like you are there for them if they need them. They can open up to you when they're ready.
Yeah,
But
I think that's really a good point that you said about just having stuff around,
Yeah.
just exposure. You know, you don't usually see like tampons in like home bathrooms. I remember whenever I go round to my friend's house, or even at, like when I'm working at the hospital, I'll like carry around my tampons in like a closed container so that no one can see.
I know.
Oh, you shove it up your sleeve.
Exactly. Or
Like honestly, that is such a
I
classic.
know.
And sometimes I still find myself doing, I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
No, I'll tell you what, I did that today.
It's crazy.
Today, and like I'm about to talk about periods, and I am still so strucken with the like, I have to hide this.
Yeah, but you're just so like, you're just tuned to do that. Yeah, and you know, you shove it up your sleeve and you go like in class and stuff. And I don't blame people for doing that because we are brought up, unfortunately, and that's just how it is. But really need to like get past that, I think.
My friend's child, I remember visiting her house, like just a wee play date, and he was about 5, came running into the living room, and he had a sanitary towel stuck around his wrist. And he was pretending to be a wrestler. He thought they were sweatbands. And he had them stuck around his wrist. And I thought it was so adorable. Yeah. But she was like, oh yeah, we just, like that, they're just, he's exposed to them all the time. He sees them, and they're just like normal in the house. But yeah, you might get creative with them. He stuck one around his wrist. But I just thought it was so funny to see that he was just like, but he knew it was a sanitary towel. He said, but it's all their mummies, but I just like to play with them.
I think that's so good.
The number of ex-boyfriends I've had who have had no idea what a tampon looks like is
it's insane.
Yeah, hence X.
I think
yeah, but then that's the thing. It's like they're just not exposed to it. This child will know.
And there is like that stigma in school, like you're typically separated from boys and girls, and girls are taught about your period, and then boys aren't. And I get it because it is a bit more intimate for girls. You want to give them the opportunity to like open up and have those questions. But I do think it does need to be a bit more like everyone in, because otherwise you get the stigma building of like, oh, it's her time of the month, or she's moody, and that's where it starts to come, because they don't understand what it is.
And also it then sort of strips the young boys of the opportunity when they're older, and when they're men, and when they have daughters. Now they're embarrassed to talk about this with their daughters because they have been stripped of that education when they were young.
And they're embarrassed, which also isn't fair.
Yeah, so it's obviously, it's like you have to do the groundwork. It's like it happens at the very beginning. I know like so many people and get extremely tired during their period as well, like during their actual, like the few days that they're bleeding. Is that normal? Like, is that just, I know that's how we all feel, and should we just give ourselves grace for that?
So, I mean, when you're having your period, you're obviously losing blood. Yeah. And so within your blood, you have iron. So you're losing a lot of iron, and that can contribute towards your fatigue. And so it is recommended that women during their period have a little bit extra iron. You know, you can get it in food, leafy greens. You can also take iron supplements. Sometimes they can be a bit harsh on the stomach, but there are you know, things that you can dissolve in water and things that they're a lot easier on the stomach. But I do recommend that you take a little supplement, something to give you that extra, you know, bit of energy. It is natural to feel tired when you're losing blood. You know, your body is working really hard on your period. And so you should make sure that you take that extra bit of rest. You know, have that extra hour of lying in bed.
Not my house. 2 wee tiny ones. I have a few questions here I'm going to throw out. Okay, well this is interesting actually. Okay, hiya, I've been experiencing a shift in the colour and flow of my period after starting a new birth control pill. Is that normal, or should I be concerned? There's obviously this conversation around birth control as well, about should you or shouldn't you, about like traditional birth control, about pills obviously, because you know, people who are concerned about the hormones and the artificial hormones that you're putting into your body, and do they have long lasting effects. But if somebody's obviously experiencing a different type of flow than they would normally have because of a new birth control, would you say that's signs for concern, Priya?
So when you start different types of birth control, so it can affect your period. So you might have irregular bleeds, your cycle might change, and that is very normal. Okay.
Is that just adjusting to the
new? So that is adjusting, and that should last for maybe 3 or 4 months. Okay. But if you do find that you're bleeding between periods after that period, or if you're bleeding after sex or during sex, then you should see your GP because this can indicate something different.
I mean, I had friends, like, whenever we were sort of late teens age, and they would have had a thing called the implant. Do you remember that? I don't know if that's still a thing. Are people still doing
a few
that?
people have the implant.
And it looks like a hair slide, like a clip, and it's like an implant.
I
And
could never get on board with it, but I've seen a lot of people have it.
Yeah, and like a friend of mine just didn't have a period for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And like, I don't think she was concerned at the time because she was like late teens and she was like, this is great, but should that be concerning? Because that's a long time where your body's not releasing eggs.
So sometimes methods of hormonal contraception do result in not having periods. So I mean, I know that the IUD, that can cause heavier periods.
Okay. What is the copper coil?
So the copper coil is also known as the IUD. So it's essentially like a little small copper T-shaped device that's put up into the uterus, and that stops menstruation. It's T-shaped. It can help, prevent. It's used to stop contraception.
Yeah.
But it can cause heavier periods. I don't know if you.
Yeah. So I've had the copper coil, and I got it because I've had like a bit of a journey with contraception, with my periods, but also because every time I went on one, I couldn't find something that worked for me. So I had the pill for quite a few years, and I didn't, at that age again, didn't really know any of the side effects. And so I started getting all of these like mental health problems, and I thought, well, maybe it could be the pill. And it turns out when I came off it, I did feel a lot better. So for me personally, I was like, I'm going to try something non-hormonal.
So the copper pill.
So yeah, the copper coil is non-hormonal.
That's a 2p.
But I tried something non-hormonal because I was like, that might be better for me. But then obviously with this ongoing thing with potentially endometriosis, that would mean it would make my periods a lot heavier. So it was even worse for me personally. All of this I say all the time is totally non-biased because every single body is so different. And I just can't emphasize that enough when I talk about it, like on empower periods. But for me personally, it didn't work for me because I just had really, really heavy periods all the time. So yeah,
and then they got even heavier with the copper coil.
Yeah, like really heavy and like really, really bad cramps, which I know is something that you can expect if you do get the copper coil.
It's one of the side effects. There is also, when people think about intrauterine devices, there is a hormone-based one called the Mirena coil. So essentially similar to the copper coil, but it's just got the hormone progesterone in it.
Right.
And that's your periods are less heavy with that one, but it is also hormone-based.
Are they uncomfortable to have in?
You don't feel it, but the insertion, that's not very nice.
No,
like for me
never
personally,
is.
I mean, it's not as bad as people probably expect. Again, like you're not told what it's really going to be like, so no one knows.
That's also like, there's also this, like I remember the first time I used a tampon.
Yeah,
that's
a whole new thing.
And my mum, and I was a virgin, but my mum was like, you're not supposed to use them if you're a virgin, but
you're not taught how to like actually insert a tampon.
No.
And I don't know, I was taught how to put a condom on a banana in school before I was actually taught how to have put a tampon in. And that's something, and that's probably one of the main things through Empower Periods that I get people saying like, you talk about tampons because I really do like push people like just try them, like try something so that you can swim. And I know it's not like those adverts that say you can do anything on your period if you put a tampon in, but it doesn't take away all of that stuff at all. But it does mean you can go in the pool when you're on your period and be a bit more free with it. But so many people say I'm too scared, or I've never been taught, or I've tried and it didn't work. And just get there with a mirror and try and like do your best, because that's how most of us have done it.
That's what most people are afraid to do, is get the mirror right.
It is, but no one says like go and do it. But honestly, that's how I did it. That's how everyone else I know has done it. So
if we've seen our vulvas as much as we've seen our faces, we'd be in queer neck, which is a very Irish phrase. I mean, we would be in great shape. Okay, is that the coil?
That's the device that you put into your uterus, like
is it the coil? No, is that a different thing?
The copper coil.
Okay, is that what
That's
it is?
the same thing, right?
I don't actually know.
Okay, but you put this is inserted
I
anyway.
think they might be slightly different, but they both go up into the vagina. Yeah, but that can cause heavier periods. And then the combined oral contraceptive pill, that can cause reduced periods, and sometimes that can reduce some of the cramping and cause lighter periods. So sometimes when people are having heavier periods, the treatment for that is the combined pill. Exactly.
So what is menstruation?
So menstruation is just the umbrella term for a woman's monthly bleeding, so their period. So it can last anywhere between 21, 35 days, and it's when the lining of your uterus sheds, and that, you know, comes out through your cervix, through your vagina as blood, and that can be about 5 tablespoons usually of blood, but this can, you know, vary, can be heavier in some women, lighter in others, and that happens every month. And that
5 tablespoons of blood, how often?
Every month, and it's about 90 millilitres.
That's
that we
all
lose.
you lose?
Yeah, I know. Are you shocked about that?
5 tablespoons?
To be honest, I think I lose a lot more with how
I
heavy
use
my
about
periods
3
are.
gallons.
I know.
It's not.
It's insane.
Crazy.
When I heard that fact, I was like, "Oh, am I
5
okay?"
tablespoons?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad I don't lose gallons
It's
now.
insane, isn't
I
it?
mean, 5 tablespoons is a lot of blood.
Yeah.
Is it?
I guess it is
Yeah.
quite a lot.
Why am I so desensitized to the amount of blood? I'm like, wow, well there we go. Oh my goodness. Well, you learn something new every day, don't you?
So back to the question.
Yeah.
What was the...
What was the question about? Oh, about the change in colour and flow, like about that being concerning, about using birth control, and it's obviously changed this girl's colour of her period as well. Because I know sometimes, like, the colour of the blood that you produce is important, isn't it? Because I think, what's the difference between like a bright red blood and then like a dark black blood? Like one is like older blood, is that right? That's been...
So I think when you first start your period, you tend to have sort of darker coloured blood, because that's the first blood that's come off.
Yes.
That's being released, and that is very normal.
Yeah.
But I know that if you're concerned about anything, if anything is different to your regular period cycle, you should always see a doctor about it. So whether that's a change in the colour of your period blood, or if it's change in your discharge, or change in symptoms, you're getting really bad migraines or really bad cramps, or bad acne at a certain time every month, always see a doctor about it, because there's usually something that can be done. Whether that's changing your form of contraception, whether that's taking a different medication.
It's wild, because for years I've always had, as I said already, really painful, like my periods would have lasted up to 10 days as well. It had been very long, very painful, and because it was always like at my family, it was like, oh, that's just the way it is. And then after having children, they're nowhere near as heavy, as painful, or last as long. And I don't really know if there's a science behind that, or maybe it's just that I'm getting slightly older now. I'm nearly 35, and possibly that's the reason behind that. But like, I'm grateful of it, because I'm like, well, that's a bit of a break. Because for like 20 odd years before that, I just accepted, okay, I'm just gonna have this really, really painful period all the time. Okay, so here is another one. So, I'm in my late 20s, and I've been experiencing irregular periods for the past few months. Could stress be a factor, or should I be worried about a more serious underlying issue? So obviously I think one of the two things I hear that most affect people's periods are their weight change in their weight, and stress levels, obviously, and cortisol in the body affects your period. But are people doing long lasting damage to their to their menstrual cycle if they have prolonged periods of stress, or like sudden weight gain or sudden weight loss?
I think any change in the body that is sort of dramatic, and to the extent that it affects your menstrual cycle, is something that you should try to avoid. And if you've had extreme weight gain or extreme weight loss, and that has affected your period, you should see a doctor about it. You should obviously with weight loss, a lot that happens to a lot of athletes I know with REDS syndrome, and so where your period.
What syndrome, sorry?
So it's the I can't remember what it stands for.
Is this in female athletes?
In female athletes, yes, where they're exercising a lot.
Oh yeah.
Their period stops, and
does that affect fertility, I assume?
It can affect fertility, and it can affect, it can cause muscle wasting. It can affect so many different processes in your body, and your periods stop, and that's not something that should be happening. That's a sign that you're overworking your body. Your body function is, breaking down. That shouldn't be the case. And so I would see your GP if that were to occur, because a lot of like athletes, people who exercise a lot, think that that's, you know, it's normal, it's part of it. That's not the case. Similarly, when you're on a diet, if you're not eating enough food, you can sometimes have like your periods can stop, and that's not normal either. And so any sort of change, especially if it occurs randomly, if you've been having regular periods for the last, you know, God knows how many years, and then suddenly it just changes. I mean, sometimes that can be, you know, normal, can be a sign of aging, where your periods do tend to become a bit lighter as you age. I mean, sometimes they become heavier, but it's strange with the menstrual cycle.
So they do get lighter with age? Okay.
They do sometimes.
We've all got something to look forward to.
That's one good thing.
But in other women, they can get heavier. So it's not really, I mean, usually lighter, but you can't really predict these things. But I do think that, you know, if you're concerned about any
always
sort
just
of change.
see your GP. Victoria, what is like the most common thing that somebody would approach you with, you know, within employer periods? Like, what is the most common thing that people come to you to talk about?
I was thinking just then, like, a lot of people say stress. Like I get a lot of people say like, oh, do you know if stress is, you know, can affect it? And it is unbelievable. Like, even my friends and family like go through stuff, and then they say about their period, and I'm like, have you ever thought about the connection between that? And a lot of the time, if people come to me, like, what I'll do is obviously go and do the research, and then I create it into like, you know, some digestible content that looks pretty, so people like read it. That's what I try and do. And then sometimes I put like polls up and things, and do a bit of like a survey, which I think is probably the most beneficial really out of all of it, because then you can see the other, and because it is a community of basically people that are either sufferers or supporters, so everyone is helpful. And because of that, you get quite like a rounded like review, and then I go back to the person and I'm like, well, I found this and this and this, and then, you know, I would go to the doctor, so go to them and even take the information that I found for you. And I do find like a lot of people, like I said, have endometriosis, and a lot of people that suffer similar symptoms say like, oh, I've got really, really heavy periods, or I'm really like tired, and then I can say like, well, you know, that could be a symptom of this, this or this. And what I found helpful when I was like still getting my diagnosis, but like guiding that pathway was going to the doctor and saying like, you know, I think it could be endometriosis. I'm not sure, like, is there a chance, like, based on my symptoms, that you think it could be this? And could I go down like a scan route, or like have a referral?
You're just helping them along
with
just
the guiding
symptoms.
them, because I mean, you know, GPs, like, unless you specialise in a certain sector, like, they don't know every single thing about every single individual diagnosis. So I don't know, I find that quite helpful sometimes to go in and say like, it could be
endometriosis?
So endometriosis, correct, you're probably better at saying it, to be honest, is like the lining of the tissue growing on, do you know? I need to do my own research on it, but it's like the lining of the tissue is growing.
So it's a different type of tissue growing on the lining of the uterus, tissue that essentially shouldn't be growing there, which is why it causes pain. And so you have endometriosis, and then you also have adenomyosis, which is when there's muscle tissue growing, when there's different kind of tissue growing on the muscle layer, and that can also cause pain.
And is that painful all month round, or mostly when, like, during your act, like when you're bleeding?
I think it's like specific through the phases. So
I don't
like,
even know what you call that phase when you're bleeding.
Well,
your
the menstrual phase, your period.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
So like for me, and for a lot of the people that I do speak to that have endometriosis, obviously I don't know if I actually have it yet. It's very hard to diagnose. But based on my symptoms, like, a lot of us get it before. So that week before is just like, and particularly like during ovulation, when your body's obviously working overtime as well, and no one really thinks about that. I mean, I remember I used to get like period cramps like halfway through my cycle, and I'd be like, why am I getting cramps? Like, I was never taught that was a thing. So like, why am I, because I'd get them more then than actually on my period. And it wasn't until I started researching this and learning that, you know, you actually can feel ovulation, and you can feel a little bit like of the cramps, that it was normal. And it was such a relief when I found that, because I was like, is there something actually wrong with me? Like, why am I feeling it halfway through my cycle and everyone else is getting it when they're bleeding? So. And
so didn't you say that you go into like schools and stuff and do talks?
Yeah.
And are you going into secondary school age?
So the aim is to go into like all schools.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's actually really hard to get into schools and
Yeah.
have people listen. A lot of places say that they already have it in place, but
Not
they
really.
don't. And like, I know they don't, and they don't have. If they do, then it's not enough, because you're still having all these people come out of schools without
Yeah.
the education,
Yeah.
or like not the education, the support. Like
Yeah.
they don't know this side of a period. They know everything. Like they could probably, label the reproductive system, but they can't say what each part of it's going to do to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're currently going into universities, which are actually getting really good feedback, because maybe they're a bit more like engaging and understanding, because they know that they're going through it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, that's where we're currently at. But
And I suppose as well, it's like giving people the information so that when they go home, that they can, like, there are so many people, I imagine, who when they take their first period, hide it
yeah,
and don't go and say to anyone at home, oh, I think this is what's happening, especially in homes where there maybe isn't a mother figure.
yeah, 100%.
They're just speaking to a man who's as embarrassed as they are, and they're both just like, oh, and they just
I
don't
think
want to.
it would be so helpful to like educate these men as well, like people that don't have a female figure or anybody to talk to, because you might even have someone that in your life, but they're just not open about periods, and then you feel really lost and you're still stuck. So like to give that support system to not just the person who's bleeding, but to actually everyone, because clearly none of us really know. Like I'm learning as I go. I'll say like next week I got thrush or something, I would then research it, and then I'd make a post on it, and then I'd have people say, oh, I have that too, or like, what did you do to help that? And like that's how I'm kind of like working through, like teaching yourself and then providing the support alongside it, and then saying, go see a doctor, but just being that like kind of cushion between having it and
Flagging
then
it, I
seeking advice.
suppose.
Just finding out.
It's really important to make people aware about these things, because sometimes when people come into a GP, they might not recognise. They might say, "Oh, I've got pain, in my tummy." Abdominal pain is like it can be a huge range of different things. But if someone says they have abdominal pain every month, it flares up every month, and then that gets the doctor thinking, right? If they're a female, that gets the doctor thinking, could this be something to do with their it could be endometriosis, it could be something period related, and that's like a huge clue. But it would take the patient knowing and like being aware about this happening every month for the doctor to then pick it up, because obviously we're not we're not miracle workers.
So
we don't we need the clues from the patient, because
And there are like that's with a lot of like different spectrums as well, because even like diagnosing like behavioural disorders and learning difficulties, like they're all based on like your ability to go in and communicate what's happening, and lots of the time that's very difficult to communicate. Like whenever I was younger, I used to take seizures, and then I was started to get treated for epilepsy, but I didn't actually have epilepsy, so then it was sort of just they were
go
all
down like different paths.
and it's like you can't blame the medical professionals in front of you, because they only have the information you're giving them. So obviously, as you're saying, tracking things and being as specific as you can, and maybe getting to know your own body, so that actually this isn't what I normally experience. And being able to go on with that information leads to maybe a smoother and a more informed diagnosis of something.
Sometimes I literally go in with like symptoms lists, and I'm like, right, I've had this the past month. Like something like literally last month I had like a really irregular bleed, and I was like, this isn't normal, like why have I, and it was like really heavy, like, and I get heavy periods, so I'm like, this isn't right, like I know when a heavy period is on. And I went to the doctor, and like she did all like the examinations, and she was like, it could just be that you've just had an irregular period, and like it's not normal, but like there could be anything, like I've just like had a change of lifestyle or something, and I'm just like adjusting to a new thing, and now my periods come on. So, and I waited for my next period, and it was normal and like back to routine. So it's because I knew that, and I went in with all these symptoms, and like I tracked it for previous months to say that it was regular. I feel like it helped speed it up as well for me and my benefit, not just like the doctor, but helped me out as well, because I was like, okay, it's fine.
Doctors definitely appreciate a symptom list.
Oh, that's
than
good.
A
I've always wondered whether I'm like,
the symptom list is a lot better.
I go and being all, here's what's wrong with me. I have the answers, just you write it down.
Yeah, we prefer the symptoms rather than diagnosis.
So like, is it helpful?
No, it's definitely helpful. Just, I mean, the opposite could be said for diagnosis.
So passive aggressive. By the way, come in with just symptoms, not answers.
No, obviously the doctors want to know what you're thinking. That's really important, and we need to address like your concerns and what you think's going on, because you know your body the best.
I'm just like laughing at the thought of someone coming in and going, and you're like, don't tell me what's wrong with you. So you're saying you think going into a doctor with a symptom list is much more helpful than going in and telling them what's wrong with you?
Oh, absolutely. Doctors definitely prefer having patients come in with a symptoms list rather than a diagnosis list.
Adamant. But then that's what can lead to hypochondria, isn't it? Because I remember even when I was younger, I used to go to my mum, I know my head's falling off, and she would be like, it's not like, I would always have this list of things, and she's like, I was like, I'm just trying to get off school.
Trust me, I'm fine.
No, obviously doctors appreciate, patients know their body's the best, so it's important to like address their like concerns. But at the same time, having a symptoms list is very useful.
Just steers it in the right
direction. Victoria, what's the goal with Empower Periods? What would you love to see happen?
Well, in the broad grand scheme of things, I would love to just have obviously smash the taboo. That is the bigger picture. But in terms of Empower Periods and the way we can support that, I'd want to be able to have a team of people that can go off and do these talks at unis, schools, workplaces, because it doesn't just stop at education. It is literally going into offices, saying it makes such a difference when a work office has sanitary products in there, but even when you go to a bar and there's sanitary products, I'm like, oh yeah, good for you.
And also a variety.
Yeah, and
not a one size fits all sort of thing.
100%. But that's the goal really, to just talk about it more and have these things that I can hand out to people. I mean, every time I go to a talk, I give packages out of things that I've partnered with companies that have, things I've actually tried, things that I love, and things that I can fully wholeheartedly say, please try this because it will help you, or just give it a go, because it's not for everyone. A lot of the stuff I do say oh, try it, and then people are like, that wasn't for me, and that's cool, but at least you know about it, period pants, at least you can try it. So that's the big goal.
That's great. And I think obviously there's a massive group of people that might get lost in that if you're concentrating solely, like you say, on just educating people in schools, because then what about everyone past that?
Doesn't stop there.
It doesn't,
because we've all grown up without that, so it's the majority of us really are not in school. I think it's important to me, education is the root of the taboo, because if you can get into that vulnerable sector, then they're just going to keep growing up and getting better
and reintroduce those ideas to their own kids.
Just breaking the conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's say the word vagina. Let's actually say period. Let's not hide our tampons when we go out the classroom. That's obviously going to really help. But what about all these people that are still stuck with endometriosis but don't know about it because they're too scared to go to the doctors, or are suffering with a contraception they've been taking but they didn't really know what the side effects were, so now they're just sat with heavy periods and don't know what to do about it.
And it's a larger conversation too about people are so embarrassed to talk about anything. We touched this at the very start, anything to do with their vagina or their vulva, and anything at all with childbirth or periods, or even female anatomy at all.
I think it is.
I was staying over in a hotel there before Christmas, and at the time I was still breastfeeding my son, and I had to pump when I was away because I was away without him, and there was no fridge in my room, so I had to go down with my bags of breast milk and give them to the porter downstairs. She's like, would you mind putting those into the fridge? And they're just clear bags full of milk, and he's holding them. He's all, no problem, and he was lovely, and he was away off. But there was still that, even for me, and I am very
tension.
I'm very lucky to feed my son anywhere and anywhere, because he needs to eat, and just like everyone else. And my boobs are for feeding my child, and that's it. Much to my husband's dismay. But I remember handing him these bags of milk, and I was just sitting there going, oh, we both know these have come out of my boobs, and that's made me feel weird. And I hate that.
Even though you're so open, yet we still have this deep-rooted taboo in us, and it is hard to even break through as people that are open and confident. So the people that aren't, obviously they just need a bit of a push, and that's why I think it's so important to give that awareness that you say, and spread awareness and talk about it, and then be like, do you know what, it's actually fine, you have it, that's cool, let's talk
maybe
about it.
Maybe if we all had a legal obligation to post online as soon as we had our period.
Let's just document it.
It's just always online, and everyone's just so desensitized then that they're they meet up with you and you're seeing you on your period.
And me too.
Me too, snap. Period parties. Oh my god, you You could sync up with your friends and go on a night out and just be annoyed all night.
No, I do love that. But I have a question about documenting, what as we were saying, periods. So what exactly do you document when you're tracking your periods? Do you document the flow? Do you document your mood, like discharge? What?
Yeah, what are you
Well, on these apps, like I use Flow in particular, but on these like any app from what I can gather, is they have like sections for like heavy, light, medium period. Some of them say like, have you had sex or whatever, if you can kind of say that if you want. Sometimes I do, because I'm like, with endometriosis potentially you can have sex, painful sex and then bleeding after sex. So for me it's quite helpful to be like, is there a pattern in when that's happening each month, or is it just random? Because I have had bleeding from sex before and that is something I've suffered with. So that's on it. And then also you can put like your discharge. That's another thing I'm tracking at the moment, because to work out like, just to get to know my body on it, like honestly, that's why as well. But to track your discharge, like it's another thing through each phase. It's so different every month, and I'm just like, I was clueless to that. So that's what I'm kind of tracking. But mostly just like you can put all your like mood swings, like how you feel, if you're happy, energetic, tired. It's just good to look back and be like, oh, I felt that way.
Isn't it wild when you think about how much effort and time and care we put into
it affects so much.
But the amount of time and effort and care that we put into like our skin and our hair, and getting to know like other parts of our body, like we check our boobs, like all the things that we do, and our vaginas are so abandoned. Like they're just ignored.
Neglected.
They really are. They're just so sad. They're like, what? Remember me? I take up a large portion of your life and you're just ignoring me.
Like insanely large. Like literally, like historically women were just to reproduce. And so it was like a massive deal. I literally did my dissertation on the attitudes towards menstruation. So I'm like obsessed with history and like the period side of it.
That's what I wanted to ask you though, about when did this shift? Surely there was no shame attached to vaginas years ago.
You would think, I mean, I only did it in the early modern era in like England.
Okay.
But based off of that, I went into it thinking, oh yeah, like obviously the dominant theory is that it would be negative, because if it's bad now, what was it back then? Yeah. But actually, to be honest, there was no dominant attitude. And if anything, it was that we thought it was like fruitful and like you were flowering. So if you couldn't reproduce, you were like deemed worse than someone that like had a period, because your period showed that you could reproduce. So you were
favourable when you had your period.
Yeah, you were. And it is, I mean, there's so many funny things. Like they used to think like throwing a menstrual rag would like, you know, cure love poison. Like all of these things, they used to think it would cure love sickness.
Is there something about a skunk's tail or something, or hair?
Oh my god, I don't know. I bet there is though. Honestly, it's insane.
No, there's a thing where it's like
that is insane.
Do you know like those old myths, like dip a hare's tail in a Fanta orange? They didn't have Fanta orange.
Like all
do you know what I mean? And you'll have no cramps. Like
there's so many of them as well, and it is insane. But no, it is really interesting.
Yeah, and is there anything that you've read that's you're like, oh, that's better that they used to do things like that, and now we've ruined it?
In terms of that, like obviously we used to pretend like. I think we just used to like favour the reproductive system a bit more than we do now. And now it's just like periods are taboo and let's not talk about it. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely changed, maybe for the worse, but we're getting there.
We're going to go full circle.
Yeah, hopefully. We're
going
maybe
to
not quite back then.
But period parties, I think, are a great idea.
Exactly. We should be monitoring our discharge. We should be
host events.
Monitoring our mood.
Let's have big events where we all just track our periods.
Crap we talk about with our friends in our WhatsApp groups. We should be talking about our periods more. Like, it would be so much more
cocktail
useful.
parties.
Yeah. Oh my god. You should host the first. You should host the first period party.
I'll do it.
Thank you so much. You've been very informative and an absolute breath of fresh air. Where can people find you online if they would like to follow Empower Your Periods?
So we have an Instagram page called Empower Periods, and you'll find us there. And then just our email if you want to have any more contact.
And what's the email in case people
empowerperiods@outlook.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So lovely to speak to you both.
Long live the period.
Yes.
Long live the period.
Thank you for joining us.